Kelly Davis' shuttle approached the dry dock containing the USS Excalibur. She never failed to experience the feeling of awe every time she saw these vessels. The Excalibur had just spent 18 months being refitted in Earth orbit at the Starfleet dry dock facilities. Nearly 2 years ago, the ship had been towed into Earth orbit after sustaining damage in the ultimate computer incident. Starfleet very nearly considered scrapping her. However, the decision was made to refit the ship. With extensive repair and upgrade, the vessel had to be literally rebuilt from the keel up.
Well, let's see who else is here. View screen on. Now look at that. The Enterprise. I've got one of these babies now, Jimmy. No more boys club.
Excuse me, ma'am. We're docked, Captain. Captain Davis?
I'm sorry, Ensign. I wasn't paying attention.
Davis sighed and stood. Her sleeve caught her attention. She looked down at her new uniform before starting toward the door. Even after 18 months, she had not quite gotten used to the extra bit of braid on her sleeves. Davis followed the ensign across the shuttle bay.
Attention on deck.
Permission to come aboard, sir.
Permission granted, Captain. Welcome home.
Congratulations on your accelerated promotion, Lieutenant Riley, as well as your posting as navigator. I think both are well-deserved.
Lieutenant Riley suffered from feelings of exclusion which were mostly in his own antenna-adorned head. As the only human Andorian hybrid known to exist, he never felt quite at home with either race. He had chosen, early in life, however, not to allow his DNA to define him. He had graduated Starfleet Academy with honors. Captain Davis had made it her mission to see that he got as far in the fleet as he deserved.
Thank you, Captain. I'm told it was based on your recommendation.
Well, you earned it, Don. Let's just make sure you keep on earning it.
You can count on it, Captain. I have to do some work in auxiliary control. Can we get together for drinks later?
Of course. We can invite some others and make it into a family get-together, assuming they've all made it aboard.
I can't recall exactly how many have reported on board, but I think we can count on a good turnout.
Oh, good. Meanwhile, I'll take this turbo lift up to the bridge, and we can catch up later. Bridge. Captain's personal log. Stardate 8406.6. I can't help but feel the eyes of the entire Federation are on me, judging my every decision, watching my every move. After all, I am an untried captain with an untried crew, taking out one of the finest ships in the fleet. Of course, I'm sure I raised a few eyebrows when I chose an almost entirely female bridge crew. I can't wait to show the brass that any concerns they may have are unfounded. This is what I've always wanted. This is what I've been waiting for all these years. My own command. I never could have anticipated I'd get it by replacing a captain who'd been lost in action, along with his XO and a sizable chunk of his crew. All because of a malfunctioning computer. With all that is expected of me, I should be terrified, but I am strangely calm. I'm sure it's because of the exceptional bridge crew I have chosen. Commander Talesa will be a fine science officer. Selecting a Vulcan is one tradition that Kirk got right. Besides, she was instrumental in redesigning its ship sensor array. Commander Robin Nichols. She was the obvious choice for chief engineer. She and I have known each other for years. She's been personally supervising the engine refit for the past 8 months. And when I come to think of it, no one else even occurred to me for the job.
Kelly entered the bridge and sat down. She looked over at the empty science station.
Talesa must be below decks, calibrating her sensors. Well, let's take a look around. Channel my intercom system to the main view screen, please. On screen. Let's see. Sensor deck, sick bay, engineering. Where the heck is everybody? Screen off. Lieutenant Riley, report. Davis here.
Is there something wrong, Captain? I'm rather tied up at the moment.
No, nothing wrong. I thought maybe you were finished with that work and would like to go over some of the new equipment on the bridge.
Could you come down to auxiliary control, please? They put in some interesting equipment down here that I'd like to show you.
That'll be fine. I'll be right down.
Oh, by the way, they changed the location of auxiliary control. It's now located on level 20, next to the botany lab. See you in a few minutes.
Did he say next to the botany lab?
Davis exited the turbolift on deck 20 and stood in front of a set of double doors. She looked over her shoulder. The botany lab was right behind her. She was sure Lieutenant Riley had been pulling her leg, but the sign hanging over the door read Auxiliary Control Room.
Wait a minute. This is some sort of stick-on label. It must have been applied recently. It comes right off. Botanical Gardens? Just what the hell is going on here?
Surprise!
Davis' mouth dropped. Several tables had been gathered around potted trees. Flowers, food, and drinks were arranged on all of them. All around them were her command personnel: Talessa, Collier, her helm officer, Robin Nichols, Maureen Farrell, her chief medical officer, and among the 20 or so others stood Lieutenant Donald Riley, smiling broadly.
Welcome aboard, Captain.
Riley, you sneak. You set me up. They changed the location of the auxiliary control indeed.
You didn't really think I formally invite you down to your surprise party, did you?
The party had lasted for several hours and had only wound down minutes ago. Talessa, Nichols, Farrell, and Collier sat, sipping their drinks in assorted chairs. Conversation had tapered off. Now they were simply enjoying the peace and quiet in the company of friends.
Well, it's terribly late, Kelly.
Oh, it must be. Look at Talessa. She's dozing.
If you'll excuse me, my engines need tending to. Whoa!
I'll help her up, Captain.
Here, I'll help. The engines can wait, Nichols. You need to tend to yourself. Y'all young people don't know how to handle your liquor.
Nonsense, Doctor. I'm as sober as any of you.
That's not saying much, Robin. We're all pretty buzzed.
My Vulcan metabolism isn't as affected by alcohol, Kelly. I'll assist Nichols to her quarters.
I don't need no assistance. Well, maybe a little bit.
I'll go along with him, Kelly. Maybe Talessa can assist me to my quarters after we drop off Nichols. Oh, maybe I can't hold my liquor either. Good night, all.
Red alert! Red alert! This is a drill. Repeat, this is a drill. All personnel, report to battle stations. Captain Davis, report to the bridge.
Davis had time to change her uniform before her intercom whistled. No voice message, just the whistle. Davis knew it was Talessa's polite way of reminding her she was being hailed. Davis looked at her tousled hair from a fitful night's sleep, pulled it back, and tied it off. She shrugged as she checked her appearance. Professional enough, she thought. Fighting the worsening hangover, she made it to the bridge. The turbolift doors opened. The sudden sounds and lights of the bridge disoriented her for a moment. Suddenly, a hypo was thrust into her arm. When the telltale hiss of the hypo faded, Davis's vision cleared and her legs were more certain under her. She turned and mouthed a "thank you" to Dr. Farrell, then made her way to her command chair. She was relieved to see all her familiar bridge crew at their stations instead of the space dock personnel.
Science section reports all secure, Captain. Sensors and scanners are operational.
Weapons on standby. Helm is clear across the board.
All subspace channels clear. All decks report secure.
Navigation is clear, and standing by for course.
Engineering will report impulses and warp engines ready. Deflectors and life support at 100% capacity.
Communications, cancel red alert and secure from battle stations. Well, what do you think of our little girl now, Commander Talessa? Quite a beauty, isn't she?
Unquestionably, Captain. I think our little girl has matured considerably these past 18 months.
Agreed. Commander, report on ship's refit status.
Structural assembly is complete, as in instrumental transition and testing. All equipment and personnel are aboard. We are ready, Captain.
Any word from Space Dock?
Space dock signals all clear, Captain.
Well then, shall we give Excalibur a proper shakedown? Maneuvering thrusters ahead, Mr. Collier. Take us out.
Collier's hands played over his board. He wore the expression of a child let loose in a toy shop. The instrumentation had never been touched by any hands other than his own. He was already familiar with the designs. He had been part of the team who installed the new boards. He savored every moment as he brought life to the heavy cruiser, awakening her for voyages as yet unimagined. Slowly the ship moved forward. The small, powerful reaction control thrusters pushed the massive bulk of the ship ever so slightly through the spiderweb-like structure of the space dock. Small work drone shuttlecraft hovered as they watched the ship slide past them. Men in spacesuits waved their arms in a farewell to the ship they had helped revitalize. The aft end of the nacelles passed the space dock, and the Excalibur was free of it.
We are clear of space dock and free to navigate.
Impulse engines, Mr. Collier. Ahead 1/2.
1/2 impulse.
ETA to orbit perimeter.
At present speed, 4 hours, 20 minutes.
Limping as we are is a crime, Captain. The ship can do warp 10 without a strain. Can't we engage the warp engines now?
Robin, you know we can't go into warp speed while so close to Earth's orbit. It's against regulations.
We can bend them a little, can't we?
Very well, Robin. Mr. Collier, we wouldn't want to tax Engineer Nichols' patience now, would we? Ahead warp factor 7.
Course, Captain?
Course at your discretion, Commander.
Collier fed in his coordinates as he activated the warp drive controls. A sleek black throttle emerged from the console beside his hooded viewer. Collier eased forward on the throttle. Everyone on the bridge could hear the even hum of the warp engines as they accelerated the mighty vessel. Davis felt the slight disoriented feeling as space was warped around the ship. The feeling was only momentary, and then everything was back to normal. Yet one thing had changed. The ship was now traveling faster than light.
Warp 1, Warp 3, Warp 5, Warp 6, Warp 7.
Message from Starfleet Headquarters, San Francisco, Captain. We'll ignore breach of Sol System navigational regulations. Safe voyage, and may the wind be at your back. Signed, Jordan Theodore, Admiral, Starfleet Senior Chief of Staff.
Acknowledge message and send my regards to the Admiral. Put me on intership intercom, please. Attention all crew. We are away from Earth's orbit and are heading out of the solar system. All crew will coordinate testing of equipment and instruments with their section heads that will, in turn, coordinate with the first officer and the communications officer. At 1200 hours, 2 hours from now, there will be another drill, and other surprise drills later this afternoon. This last drill was excellent, and I might add, only 3 seconds above the record which is held by the USS Enterprise. Just because she's the fleet's flagship does not mean she has to hold the record's battle station drill. I'm sure we can shave off those last 3 seconds, and then some. Davis out. Lieutenant Riley, prepare to alter course. Bring us 75 degrees starboard, course 45.92. Prepare for evasive maneuvering drill.
Aye, aye.
Captain's log, stardate 8407.10. 8 hours since leaving space dock. The ship's performance is, by crew's opinion, excellent. After our shakedown cruise is completed, we will report to Starbase 11 for assignment.
Davis relaxed into the soft cushions of her command chair. It was early evening now. She had since called 3 battle stations drills, which improved each time. The first testing of the subspace radio was the message to Starfleet Command that the Excalibur had since broken the Enterprise battle station's drill record, and then broke the succeeding 2 afterward. The warp engines were field tested up to warp 10, much to the delight of Engineer Robin Nichols. The new equipment was a dream to work with, and the Excalibur crew never wanted to wake up. The day had been long, but it was winding down, and Davis was about to order the Beta Shift on duty so Alpha Shift could get some rest. Talessa was still at her new sensors. Suddenly, she got a weak image on her radiation scanners.
Captain, I'm reading something strange.
Deflectors just activated. Some sort of metallic contact across our path.
Talessa, analysis?
Fascinating. Object is a spacecraft of unknown origin, configuration unknown, drive unknown, made of an unknown substance and emitting a rather high concentration of an unknown radiation.
That's a hell of a lot of unknowns, Talessa. You have the most up-to-date sensors in Starfleet, and you can't give me any information on this unknown spacecraft?
The sensors do not recognize any of the data they are receiving. I can tell you that it is perfectly round, diameter 300 meters, circumference 942.477 meters.
Riley, give me visual on the craft. Report on vessel's position and status.
Vessel is now matching our speed at warp 7, holding at 1 light-second distance.
Friendly little thing, isn't she? Communications, are you picking up anything?
Nothing, Captain.
Well, if they won't speak up, let us do the talking. Open hailing frequencies and tie in the universal translator.
Ready.
This is Captain Kelly L. Davis, Commanding Officer of the United Starship Excalibur. Please acknowledge and identify.
Sorry, Captain. Still nothing.
Talessa, can you pinpoint any life forms on the ship?
Negative, Captain. The unknown drive is making sensor scans of the interior unintelligible.
On board the glowing orb, something stirred. The alien pentagon-shaped bridge was deserted. The several consoles and the raised center command chair were covered with a fine layer of undisturbed dust. The life support had been deactivated for years by whatever disaster had fallen upon the ship, but somehow the dust on the command chair suddenly swirled away to float to the deck. Something was on the derelict vessel, something without substance, something definitely not alive. A switch on the chair's arm suddenly snapped on, and power flowed through the chair for the first time in years.
Sensors are picking up a power surge, Captain. Some sort of equipment activated aboard the vessel.
Collier, an automated defense system?
Negative as far as I can tell. Of course, my sensors are only programmed to identify known weaponry systems.
Captain, I'm getting a signal from the vessel. It's in a language even the universal translator has no record of, and it is repeating itself at regular intervals.
Transfer to my console, Commander. Computing. It is indeed repeating itself, undoubtedly a pre-recorded message. The library computer is running comparisons with all known languages.
Marking.
Minutes passed like hours. Davis wondered if the computers on the Excalibur ever advanced at all. Every duotronic computer seemed to correlate important data at the same rate, slowly. Then suddenly...
Translation as follows. Help.
It is the only part of the message that the computer could decipher, Captain.
Projected course of alien spacecraft, Mr. Riley.
If it maintains its present course and speed, it will enter the Starbase 11 solar system in approximately 7 hours.
Display Starbase 11 system up on the screen and project its course.
It will collide with one of the satellites orbiting the Starbase, Captain.
Identify, Talessa.
The satellites orbiting Starbase 11 are Starfleet transporter relay stations, zero-gravity intensive care hospitals, and independent civilian research stations. The particular station in the path of the spacecraft is a hospital. It was established along with the starbase on the planet's surface.
Wonderful. Can we tractor beam the alien ship?
Negative. At its present speed, it would undoubtedly overload the tractor field and lead to severe structural damage to the alien vessel as well as our own ship.
What about moving the hospital station to a different orbit?
The station has no maneuvering capability. It is over 20 years old and placed in a permanent orbit. The designers foresaw no need to have it moved. Due to the size and bulk, It would require the tractor beams of at least 2 Starship-class vessels to move it sufficiently out of danger.
And of course, there are no ships of our class currently docked at Starbase 11.
That is correct, Captain, though I cannot imagine how you obtained prior knowledge of the Starbase dock status.
Murphy's Law, Commander.
Why can't we destroy it, Captain?
Because we have no way of knowing whether it has a crew aboard. Collier, can we somehow knock it off course with a phaser shot without destroying it?
We have no way of knowing the extent of their shielding, if they have any at all. A single low-powered shot could very well destroy it, or damage it irreparably.
Any suggestions?
Could we possibly beam over and attempt to alter its course from within?
You're thinking like a curious kid, Nichols. Think like a Starfleet officer instead. You'd be beaming over blind.
Can you blame me, Kelly? No known propulsion or power source. Just think of what this could mean to the Federation if we bring back new and better technology.
I agree with the engineer. The dangers, if any, are far outweighed by the possibilities for technological advance. This new drive could be an invaluable asset to the Federation.
All right. I'll beam over with a medical volunteer to take a look.
Captain, Engineer Nichols and I accept the risk and should be the ones to beam over. A medical volunteer is logical, but your presence would only be an unwarranted gamble. No disrespect intended. Your technical capabilities aside, Lieutenant Commander Nichols and myself are more qualified for a mission of this nature.
Talisa and I want to do this, Kelly. Don't risk your neck to spare us from risking ours.
But you... All right. Report to the transporter room in 10 minutes in full environmental suits.
On the alien vessel, 3 golden forms coalesced, then solidified into existence on the darkened alien bridge. The lights connected to their environmental suits' helmets helped light the dimness. Dr. Farrell scanned the area with a tricorder, as Talisa and Nichols surveyed the silent, dust-covered consoles.
Everything is dead over here. Talisa, have you found anything resembling navigational equipment?
Negative. I think I have found the command chair. There is a blinking light. Switching the activated button. That seems to have deactivated the chair. I see no dust on the seat or left armrest of the chair. It is as if someone has been seated here recently. I see another flashing button inside an open panel at the rear of the armrest. Deactivating now. I see no more buttons that seem to be activated. Excalibur, are you still receiving the automated message?
It stopped a few seconds ago, Commander.
I've deactivated all the switches on the command chair's console. The signal could have been activated automatically or manually. There's no way of telling. We will continue our search. Dr. Farrell, are you picking up any life forms?
There's enough radiation in the corridors to kill the entire crew of Excalibur. My scans are useless. If there is life, they have a very high tolerance for radiation.
Perhaps you are correct. Their metabolisms might not be affected by it.
Our metabolisms are tough. Our environmental suits will protect you for a little while, but I wouldn't recommend you stay for an extended period.
Time factor?
24 hours at the most, before the radiation starts getting through your suit shielding. Nichols, can you make any sense of the consoles?
This panel behind the command chair seems to be the engineering console, but I can't bridge any power to it. A few monitors show power levels on the ship are still on. The engines are running at 80% power consumption. Most of the other ship systems are deactivated. I'll be able to locate the power source if the board were activated.
Scanning systems. I'm reasonably confident that these are the switches that will produce the desired results.
Just be careful, Talisa. Don't fire any weapons at us.
That would indeed be ill-advised. Activating switches now. Talisa out.
I have a good feeling about this bank of switches. Here goes nothing. 1, 2, 3.
The entire bridge sprung to life.
We have bridge lights. Talisa, I found what appears to be a location of the main power source. This can't be right.
What is it?
If I'm reading this right, the power source takes up a good percentage of 7 decks.
I will investigate.
I'll tag along. Maybe we'll find someone alive below decks.
Talessa walked up to the door. Unlike the Excalibur's lift doors, these did not yield and opened. Dr. Farrell noticed a crystal-like object, hand level, on the wall next to the doors. As she reached to touch it, it glowed yellow. The doors opened, and without a word they entered. Talessa could not read the various writing on the controls of the lift. However, the controls were very intuitive. Below assorted writings were simple buttons, and beside each button a series of dots. Talessa pushed the button with 8 dots, and the lift descended. After a moment, Talessa walked onto deck 8.
I'll go lower, Talessa. Survivors aren't going to hang around the power plant decks. Maybe somewhere they can get food and medical attention. I'll meet you on the bridge later.
Very well, but report to Engineer Nichols every 10 minutes. I will do the same.
Understood.
Talessa could hear the machinery as the car descended even further. She walked through the deserted corridor with her tricorder leading her to the power source. She entered the first door she saw, after waving her hand in front of the entry crystal in the wall. The room was 3 times the size of the shuttlecraft flight deck aboard the Excalibur. It continued 3 decks above and below. Talessa stood on an observation ledge on the center deck. In the room's center sat a huge globe. It resembled the ship itself, except for the hundreds of cables leading from its surface and disappearing into bulkheads, and was throbbing with a deep, regular sound. She began scanning the object rather than letting its physical size and appearance overwhelm her. If she was to do anything to change the course of this ship or relay any technological data to the Federation, she needed to first understand its operation. She caught movement from the corner of her eye. She whirled to see the dust on the ledge swirl into the air and then slowly settle down. She looked around to see what could have caused the swirling dust. She whirled around again to see another similar display. Drawing her phaser, she slowly surveyed the area. She opened her communicator channel.
Engineer Nichols, please respond.
Nichols here.
Are you observing any disturbances on the bridge?
What kind of disturbances?
Twice now, the dust on the deck near me has shot into the air, then settled as if disturbed by movement where no movement was observed.
Could the life support be coming on? The ventilators could be releasing spurts of air.
Negative. My tricorder would have registered it. I will investigate further.
Where are you, Talisa? I'm coming down to you.
Stay where you are. The situation is not dangerous at present. Even if it were, it would be illogical to endanger both of us. If you do not receive a signal from me every 5 minutes, then beam back to the Excalibur. What is Dr. Farrell's status?
She found what she believes is a sick bay. So far, she hasn't figured out any of the equipment, but she did find a lot of bodies in stasis. She'd like to beam one of the bodies to sick bay for an autopsy, but she hasn't been able to open a stasis chamber.
Tell Dr. Farrell not to disturb them as of yet. They could be booby-trapped. I will contact you in 5 minutes. Talessa out.
Switching the communicator off, Talessa relaxed her grip on her phaser. Maybe it was the ventilators after all. She could have missed it when scanning. She walked over to the ledge's railing and switched her recording to another disc inside the tricorder. She didn't want to overload the disc for fear of losing valuable data. Suddenly, the dust from all around her swirled into the air, forming a cloud which she could not see through. Something grabbed at her arm. The touch of the unknown assailant was rough and cold. A cold wind seemed to blow through her body. Her grip on her phaser was broken and it fell to the deck. Her tricorder strap was ripped from her shoulder and it too fell. Her body was pushed against the railing. The material weakened and gave way under her weight. Her scream went unheard as she fell over the ledge to hit the deck below. Above, the swirling dust cloud seemed to take on the shape of a humanoid before it settled back onto the deck.
I'm going to try a few more of the controls on the engineering consoles. Nothing. Ah, that's interesting. Scanning the console. Excalibur, you should be reading a power reduction in the alien engines. Do you acknowledge?
Affirmative, Commander. Sensors show a definite power loss in the drive.
What is our speed, Lieutenant?
Speed is down to warp 5 and decelerating rapidly. You should be at 0 acceleration in 30 seconds.
Good. As far as my tricorder can decipher, I've succeeded in deactivating the ship's main power source.
Any idea of its internal functions?
Negative. But one thing I can tell you is that our matter-antimatter process is by far superior in every way. The power plant itself is huge. The main assembly takes up 7 decks, and most of the ship. 75% of the vessel is devoted to the production of ship's power.
Any progress on the navigation?
I haven't even found the console for navigation yet. For that matter, I haven't had the time to look over any other consoles.
It would be nice to fly the alien ship to Starbase 11's orbit with an Excalibur crew aboard. Any signs of life on the ship?
Negative. Dr. Farrell found some bodies below deck. So far, she's counted over 70. It looks as if the ship's a derelict.
The radiation from the engines is clearing. We're trying to do a sensor scan of the entire ship. Please hold. Radiation is still playing havoc with the sensors. We won't be able to make accurate scans for some time yet. We'll beam you 3 back and send over a salvage team.
I'd like to stay aboard, Kelly. I already understand the controls marginally. I'd be a help to the team.
Very well. Have Talessa and Farrell signal when they're ready for transport. Davis out.
Talessa stirred from her unconsciousness. She tried to sit up. Pain shot through her body. Looking around, she discovered she wasn't on the observation ledge anymore, or below it. She had been taken to a small, bare room. She wondered if Dr. Farrell or Nichols had found her and then left her for some reason. Her tricorder had been dropped beside her. Slowly, she dragged herself to it. Adjusting the device's function, she scanned her body. She had broken 2 ribs and her right ankle in the fall. Her left arm had been sprained as well. She knew she wouldn't be able to stand and leave the room without assistance, but her communicator had been damaged. Suddenly, the whirlwind of dust returned. It loomed over Talessa. She scanned the swirling mass of dust. The small screen in the device snapped on with a picture of the cloud. At the center was a glowing golden mass. Talessa looked up at the cloud. The mass was not visible to the naked eye. Slowly, the mass depicted on the small screen took shape. Talessa gasped. The turning glow took on the shapely curves of a female. The fully formed woman smiled. Talessa looked at the cloud again. Within it, the golden woman was becoming visible to her. Talessa put her tricorder down when she could plainly see the woman.
I am Commander Talessa, First Officer of the United Starship Excalibur. Do you understand me?
The woman said nothing, but simply smiled down at her. She looked human enough, and wore some sort of a uniform. She noted the star-like insignia on the woman's left breast, and the 5 braids sewn across the under-chest beginning above the insignia and disappearing down into her belt.
Our ship discovered your vessel while returning to our base. You are on a direct collision course with a medical station which is in orbit around that base. Do you understand?
This time the woman nodded. Slowly her form floated nearer to Talessa. The form knelt by the injured Vulcan and offered her a luminescent hand. Close up, Talessa could see that her body was slightly transparent. Instinctive fear made Talessa draw back from the hand. The small retreat caused her considerable pain. The figure smiled warmly, as if assuring her that she would be taken care of. Then, without warning, the figure dove on top of her, the cloud of dust engulfing both. The figure's transparent form merged with Talessa's flesh, her mind fusing with Talessa's, and then the two were one. Talessa's mind was filled with memories and thoughts which were not her own. She suddenly realized that she was beginning to take on the personality of another being, the transparent woman. Talessa sat in the command chair on the globe ship's bridge, but it was not her, yet it was. She was living someone else's life now. She was now the transparent woman. A name rebounded in her shared mind with the other. It was Jative. All around her were people dressed in red jumpsuits, black belts, and boots. Each wore a star emblem on their left breast, and each wore assorted numbers of golden braids across their chest. They all spoke in a strange language, yet Talessa could understand every word. Her hand came up to rub her chin. She too wore the red jumpsuit uniform, only she had 5 braids across her chest.
Fleet Admiral, Our ships report victories all across the eastern sector of battle. Losses are minimal for our fleet and heavy for our enemies.
Thank you, Jameer. Tactical.
She heard herself say. The main screen at the Pentagon Bridge's front wall lit up with a battle plan of a group of stars she had never seen, yet she did recognize. She smiled at the plan. Detailed on it were hundreds of blue spheres and only at the most 50 red triangles.
Excellent. High Command will be very pleased at this news.
Speaking as Jativ seemed more natural to Talessa by the moment.
Helm, secure the hyper-acceleration drive. Communication. Transmit to the fleet my highest regards. Tell them they will receive a hero's welcome when we reach the twin planets of the home system.
Jativ stepped down from the command chair and headed for the lift doors.
Any orders, Fleet Admiral?
No orders, Jameer. Just mind your station and stay off my command pedestal. Personnel log. I don't think my dislike for Jameer, our ship's first officer, is a secret. He has wanted command of my ship, if not my fleet, and I am not going to make it easy for him. I know that he has resorted to less than honorable means to acquire authority, and I don't know how far he might dare to go. I just wonder how he was ever accepted into the service in the first place.
Quickly, Jativ made her way through a corridor. The symbols and writing over various doors and equipment were quite intelligible now. She wondered how she had ever been confused by them as Talessa. She waved her hand over the blue crystal beside a door. It silently opened. Jativ was suddenly plunged into total darkness. Though she could not see a thing, she navigated the room without bumping into anything. Her hand met a switch on the wall, and the room was bathed in light. Jativ's mind was overwhelmed with feelings of relief and safety. This room had always been there for her when she was troubled or feeling low. The word home was written all over the warm surroundings of the small cabin. She unzipped her jumpsuit. The zipper was hidden behind a thin fold within the uniform. She found it with practiced ease, and in moments she was removing her boots and slipping out of the red uniform. She discarded the jumpsuit onto a cushioned chair and sat on her bed wearing her one-piece undergarment. She let out a sigh of relief, as if when she took off the uniform she ceased to be the person who wore it day after day. She looked at the uniform's insignia and the gold braids, and lay down on the bed, not taking her eyes off them. The war which had lasted so long, the command of the fleet, her responsibilities to it, and the ever-growing feeling of dread every time she stepped onto her ship's bridge seemed to fade from her mind. She peered out the large plastisteel portal. She pressed her hand against the transparency and peered out at the stars.
I had yearned for so long to be among the stars, free to wander and explore. I joined the exploration service to escape the confines of my planet. As a child, I peered up and watched my planet's twin world orbit silently along with mine. I dreamed of reaching out and touching its jewel-like beauty. I had always wanted to visit that world, and as soon as I was of age, I joined the service so that I could travel between the two. My first assignment out of the service academy had taken me out of the home system, and it was years before I made it back to fulfill my dream. It was luck that I was visiting the twin worlds when the first attacks came from deep space. At first, they were unmanned long-range missiles that plowed through the system, spreading destruction as they hit and destroyed outposts and stations. A few had made their way through our defenses and rained death across every continent. Our society's exploration service was reorganized and armed as our system retooled technology to prepare for war. My people were horrified at the level of destruction that our unknown enemy had inflicted upon us. It, however, did not compare with what followed. The missiles turned out to be reconnaissance probes programmed to lock on signs of intelligent life as they made their way through space. When the first missiles had reached our system, the fleet that had fired them began their journey to seek them out. Our neighboring star system had been colonized by our people for only 10 years. When the enemy fleet came upon it, it was decimated. Their sacrifice, though, had given a reprieve to the inhabitants of our home system. The aliens believed that the colonized system was their objective, and after stripping the planet of what resources they could, they turned their ships in another direction to seek new prey. It only took our people 3 solar cycles to assemble a sizable space fleet. Armed with not only new weapons, but with extensive stellar maps and information about our wing of the galaxy, we set out to find the enemy. I was only a junior officer at the onset of the war, but within 10 more solar cycles, and countless battles and encounters with roving enemy fleet, I had risen from ensign to ship second officer, then first officer, and upon my commanding officer's death in battle, assumed command of our ship. The ship was the flagship for a massive fleet, and after only 1 cycle, the fleet admiral had met her death. I was the most capable commanding officer of the fleet, and I was promoted once again to fleet admiral. The rise was quick and dizzying. I wanted so badly to end this conflict. The enemy fleet was now scattered, and my people's forces were now gaining the advantage by pushing them farther and farther away from our home system. I knew, however, that my people would not be satisfied with simply dispersing the enemy a safe distance from our space. They would insist on total victory and our enemy's extinction.
Suddenly the ship trembled and shook. Jativ cursed as the ship rocked again. She dashed over to where her uniform lay and reluctantly reached for it. After only a brief second of hesitation, she pulled it on, immediately becoming the burdened fleet commander once again. Jativ barged back onto the bridge. She was outraged to see Jameer sitting in her raised command chair. The man held a smoking laser pistol. 2 bridge officers lay dead on the deck. The rest sat at their stations, fearful to move. On the main screen, an enemy battlecruiser floated off their bow. Jativ now knew how far Jameer would go to command a ship.
Fleet Admiral Jatev graces the bridge with her presence. My friends were good enough to provide a small distraction for me to catch everyone off guard and assume control over the bridge. I now command this ship, Admiral.
Why, Jameer?
I made a deal with them out there. I give them this ship in trade for a position as one of their fleet admirals. This should bring this war to a close very soon, this being our fleet's flagship. The military knowledge in the ship's computers should prove useful to my new friends.
You mutinous filth! You would sell out your race to the likes of the enemy!
At least they know how to appreciate the talents of a valuable officer. They will reward me for my actions. What do I get here? Nothing. You passed me over for every promotion. I was in line to command my own ship in this fleet, and you denied me.
That's because I wanted you on the course, so I could keep an eye on you. Do you think I could have entrusted you with a ship? She would have been doomed the moment you stepped on her decks.
Jameer's eyes reddened with anger. He turned the chair to face Jativ and fired the laser. Jativ had only a fraction of a second to move. The beam had bloodied and charred her arm. She knew it would be useless for the rest of her life. The beam had severed several arteries. The only thing she did not know was, would the next few minutes be the rest of her life?
No, Jatev, I won't kill you just yet. I want you to live a little longer. Perhaps you could come with me to be at my side when I assume my duties with the enemy fleet. Oh, how exhilarating, having the famed Fleet Admiral Jatev at my side as I command their entire fleet. Perhaps I'll fashion a leash for you so I can parade you around my ship. That would be enjoyable. My allies, are you ready to receive the Jet Course's computer transmission? It's programmed to transmit all memory to your ship's computers. Acknowledge.
The screen wavered as the view changed to that of the battlecruiser's bridge. The Jacorce's bridge crew gasped collectively. Throughout the many solar cycle war, they had never seen the face of the enemy. What they saw made their skin crawl.
Admiral Segrath, acknowledged.
It figures that you would sell out to a lizard, Jameer. I always knew you were a wretched snake.
Spirited, aren't you, Jatev?
Don't call me by my name, you snake. Only my family and those I give permission are allowed to speak my name. You are not fit to be a part of our race, let alone my family, and permission I did not give.
Careful, woman. Your beauty can only excuse so many breaches of manners. Let your sharp tongue cut me one more time, and my laser will mar that pretty body of yours much more seriously.
You don't even deserve the searing flames of hell, Jameer.
Jameer exploded in anger and aimed his laser at Jateev for what he thought would be a lethal shot. Expecting the laser's shot this time, she rolled to one side. The shot missed. Ignoring the searing pain of her arm, she vaulted for herself at the navigation console. She did not have time to push any particular control, hit several at once. The ship rolled as artificial gravity was disrupted for a few seconds. Everyone lost their seats, floated, then came crashing to the deck. As she expected, Jameer fell from the command pedestal and onto the deck. With her good hand, she withdrew the dagger she wore as a decoration on her boot. The blade was small but sharp and sliced easily through Jameer's jugular vein. He bled to death in under 10 seconds. Jateev and the helm officer fought with the controls, managing to steady the ship after some effort. After the ship was under control, Jateev heard a high-pitched whine coming from her command pedestal. She ascended the steps and looked on in horror at the activated control. It was hidden in an open panel within the chair's arm, unlocked with a special spoken combination of passwords. Tears flowed down her cheeks as she hit the chair's arm with her good hand. Jameer had been stopped from transmitting the ship's memory to the enemy, but he had succeeded in killing the crew of her flagship. Jacorsa's helm officer heard the whine too. She, like Jameer, was one of the few who knew where the button was and the passwords that gave access to it. Jameer kept it in case something went wrong with his plans.
What is wrong, Fleet Admiral?
Jateev sobbed as an orange gas filtered through the bridge's ventilation system. The effects were quick, and for the crew's sake, painless. Minutes later, she lifted her head from her hand and dried her eyes. The gas burned her lungs and made her eyes water even more, but she was still alive. She looked around at the stilled figures of her dead crew. The Cruellian battle cruisers sat patiently off their bow, waiting for the promised transmission. Jateev went to the bridge's weapons console and hit a control. They'd have to wait in hell now, she thought. She usually felt satisfaction when her ship scored a kill against the enemy. The sight of the Jacorsa's nuclear missiles blowing the battlecruiser into rubble held no such feelings this day. For this kill, she'd paid with her dearest blood. More than a day later, Jateev stood before row upon row of stasis tubes. At least her crew would be preserved for an honorable burial on one of the twin planets of the home system. All except Jameer's. She had taken personal delight in dumping his corpse into the ship's generator plant. She wished he could have been alive when he hit the annihilating forces of the generator. But his death was at least painful, and she had been there to see his life drain from his body. She collapsed onto the deck. She had not eaten nor slept for over 36 hours. Dragging 70 bodies into stasis tubes with only one arm while fighting the pain of the other took everything she had. She did not think it was proper to rest until all her crew was attended to. They were good men and women. Their death was a terrible wrong, and she felt wrong to have survived them. Back on her bridge, she sat on her command pedestal. She had just finished recording her final log entry. Her work had broken open her injured arm, and she was now covered with fresh blood. With what strength she had left, she descended her pedestal and assumed the helm console. When she hurled herself at the console the day earlier, she had unwittingly smashed the main guidance controls. The ship was now locked on a course over which she had no control. She wondered if she could go below deck, make repairs, and override the console. She was growing lightheaded and knew the answer. She had lost too much blood in the last day. Death was not far from claiming her. She would soon pass onto another plane of existence. She looked forward to her afterlife, where she could be with her crew and ancestors for the rest of eternity. With the last of her will and strength, she had made it to her quarters, the only place on the ship she felt at peace. Within, she could let the eternal sleep of death come peacefully. She slowly and painfully slipped out of her uniform and laid on the bed. She thought of the 75 bodies in the stasis tubes and the ship now hurling through the galaxy on an unknown course. She had set the ship in motion with the hyper-acceleration drive at a speed the engines could handle and at a power consumption rate the generators could continuously supply. She programmed the computers to shut down all ship's functions in 1 hour. By then, she would surely be dead. With everything shut down, the ship could continue its path through space. Maybe the rest of her fleet would discover it and take her crew to the final resting place they deserved. She looked over at her torn and bloodied uniform, discarded on a chair, and smiled. She no longer had to be the fleet admiral. She could be herself now, simply a young woman who used to dream of the stars and how she might travel between them. Her breath became shallow, her pains leaving her, and her heart slowly wound down. Jativ painlessly drifted off to sleep, a sleep which quickly blended into painless death. Telesa's eyelids fluttered. Her broken ribs didn't hurt as much as before, and even her ankles seemed better. She looked up. The transparent figure of Jativ now hovered over her. Jativ smiled down at her.
You will find your injuries virtually healed now. The energies contained in my body mended you.
You are speaking in Federation Standard now, not the language I remember in my experience.
Yes. I needed to merge with your mind to learn your language. In turn, I showed you the last moments of my life.
This is not logical. The existence of ghostly apparitions is unscientific. I must be delirious from my fall.
What caused your fall, and who brought you to this small room, Telesa?
I do not know.
I did, and I apologize deeply. Your mind is terribly strong. The only way I could enter it was if your mental shields were down. Your pain of your injuries weakened those shields enough to me to become you, and you me. I took you to this storage room to prevent your unconscious body from being discovered.
Logical. Why are you here, and not in the afterlife with your crew?
You experienced my thoughts. I wanted my crew to have an honorable burial on their home planets. I have been sailing the stars for over 5 years, waiting for my fleet to find this ship. But the course was headed away from home into unknown space. Yours is the first ship to encounter mine. I cannot rest until my ship is home, Telesa. Will you help me? I haven't the physical body to alter the course of this ship. You do. Please, send us home, Telesa.
You seem to have quite extraordinary powers. Not only are my ribs healed, but my communicator seems to be fully operational. Yes, I will help. My experience with you has left some of your technical knowledge intact within my memory. Altering your course should not be difficult.
Jativ smiled warmly and neared Telesa. This time, she did not retreat. Telesa felt her mind being entered once again. It was in a manner very similar to the Vulcan mind touch, reminiscent of a warm embrace. Jativ retreated from Telesa's mind to hover near her. She raised her hand in the ages-old traditional Vulcan hand salute. This time, she spoke in Vulcan.
Live long and prosper, Telesa, sister to my mind and spirit. I shall wait in the afterworld for you, so we may renew the friendship which today was born.
Exist long and prosper, Jativ, sister to my heart and soul.
Jativ smiled, then slowly faded from view. Nichols paced the deck nervously. In the 2 hours since Telesa had been missing, she had gone over most of the bridge and found the navigation board. Unfortunately, it had been the one board which had been smashed. She ran her hands over the useless controls. Suddenly, the board flew into life, lights snapping on and damaged circuits sparking. Nichols hit what she hoped was the override controls. She chose correctly. The board went dark, and the sparks ceased. She hit her communicator.
Excalibur, any status change on the alien vessel?
What did you do, Robin? The engine's suddenly powered up and the ship's turned at 180 degrees about. You're now heading right back the way the ship came at Warp 7.
I didn't do anything.
That exact course will take the ship out of Federation space into uncharted territory. Prepare to beam back to the Excalibur. Has Talessa been found yet?
No, I have Dr. Farrell looking, and the salvage team as well.
Tell her and the salvage team to meet you back on the bridge. With all of you off, we'll hopefully be able to pinpoint her location.
Davis paced the bridge, her impatience brimming over. She turned to Riley at the sensors.
Have they all beamed back yet?
The last of the salvage team is coming over now. Commander Sante complained that his team didn't even get a chance to start their salvage operations.
My major concern is for my first officer. I'll tell the commander where he can put his complaint.
Starting an all-deck sensor scan. Sensors are still being interfered with, Captain.
Damn!
Captain, communication from the alien ship.
On audio.
Excalibur. Come in, Excalibur.
Talessa, where the hell have you been?
Exploring the vessel, Captain. I would be very appreciative if you would have the transporter room lock on and beam me aboard before the ship's acceleration makes it difficult to transport back.
Talessa, why haven't you answered our contact checks? The salvage team has been looking all over that ship for you. What have you been doing all this time?
Captain, explanations will have to wait.
Transporter room, lock onto Commander Talessa's communicator and beam her aboard immediately. Talessa, you had better have a very good explanation ready when you beam back. To say we were all a bit worried over here would be an understatement of the century.
Captain, the alien ship is accelerating to Warp 9.
Max speed.
Captain, transporter room signals they have Commander Talessa aboard.
On the main screen, the golden orb ship accelerated ahead of the Excalibur. Suddenly, it met a splatter of brilliant colors which appeared directly across its path. No explosion occurred, but the ship merely vanished. It was many hours later when Talessa, in duty uniform, stood beside Davis' command chair watching the recording.
You want to explain this to me one more time, Talessa?
Certainly, Captain. Through my research on the ship, I discovered that it belonged to a race which fought a war with a savage warrior civilization some 10,000 years ago. Some disaster had befallen the ship, leaving only the captain alive. She, too, died later. The ship, with its navigational controls destroyed, wandered at a constant speed through the galaxy. It collided with an interspatial warp, which transported it into our time. That is how it escaped detection from any local space traffic. It also explains why the design of the ship is totally alien to us. It was from another time, another era of spaceflight. Starfleet has known about the interspatial warp for some time, theorizing that it would collapse upon itself any time now. When the ship passed through the first time, it was weakened considerably. I knew it could not stay open for long, hence the hasty action to redirect the ship's course and speed.
But why send it back? Even though it was from another time, it would have proven to be a technological find.
Captain, if the entire crew of the Excalibur were to die, and you were the last survivor, what would you consider your last duty to them as payment to their loyal service?
To see that they are returned to their families for burial.
Exactly.
I can see your point now. I was only thinking of the value of the ship itself. I never really thought much about the crew of the ship. You sent them home?
I programmed the navigational coordinates as closely as I could to the exact flight path the ship assumed as soon as it materialized in our time. That should have sent it back only a few years after it vanished from its time.
It took me the better part of an hour to just begin to understand the ship's equipment, and what I did figure out was based on trial and error. How did you repair the navigational equipment, redirect the ship's course, and program the engines to power up after I shut them down? As a matter of fact, how did you find the tools and the damaged equipment at all?
I learned a great deal from the computer banks I accessed.
Telesa's eyebrow arched as if she was amused with herself.
I could say that the ghosts of the ship may have had a hand at guiding my research.
Commander, please spare me your Vulcan attempt at humor.
If you will excuse me, I have duties to perform at my station, tricorder readings to download, and the captain has instructed me to look up Murphy's Law after this was over.
I don't know, Robin. I think she may have a knack for Vulcan humor after all.
Nichols went back to her station muttering under her breath, shaking her head, still not wholly believing the story Telesa had told. Davis signed a report and cast a look at her Vulcan first officer. She sat at her console, busying herself with her tricorder discs. Davis handed the clipboard back to the young male yeoman and reclined in her chair.
Mr. Collier, lay in a course for Starbase 11. Ahead warp factor... Engineer, is warp factor 4 fast enough for you?
It'll do, Captain.
You heard the lady.
Ahead warp 4, aye.
Meanwhile, in another place in space and time, a vortex of splattered color appeared off the side of a huge armada of spherical ships. A battle alert was sounded at the craft's sudden appearance from nowhere. On the fleet's flagship, the captain turned his raised chair toward the communications officer.
Secure from alert status. It's one of ours. Science officer, report.
Admiral, it is the Jacors.
That ship's been missing for 5 solar cycles. Any communication?
On the deserted, wrecked bridge of the Jacors, the automated sensors detected the huge armada as soon as the ship had fully materialized. Its automated communications console came to life.
Affirmative, sir. Picture and audio signal.
Main screen.
The bridge of the Jacors came onto the main screen. Jative sat in her command chair, holding her wounded arm.
Fellow compatriots, greetings. I am sorry to inform you that the entire ship's complement, as well as myself, have perished from one man's act of mutiny, treason, and murder. If we are ever found, and this log is played, let the record show that the entire crew of the Jacques, with the exception of First Officer Jamir, are to receive the highest compliments for bravery. The ship's computer banks hold the recording of what happened to us. I will leave further explanation up to its review. In closing, I wish to say that I hope with all of my soul that this ship and crew will once again see their home system.
Inform High Command that we have found the Jacors. Report all crew dead, and to prepare a board of investigation as soon as we make the orbit around the twin worlds of the home system. Tell them the crew was murdered by a traitor named Jamir, who activated the ship's intruder assault system. Only her captain survived the gas. She had been administered the immunity vaccine due to her status as Fleet Admiral. Additionally, ask them to inform the crew's families of their fate. I will inform Fleet Admiral Jative's family personally.
Should we not take the Jacors to our nearest base, please, Admiral?
No, First Officer. The crew of the Jacors has been waiting nearly 5 years for a burial. I want their souls to rest in peace as soon as possible. Not only for the crew, but the captain. I expect that Fleet Admiral Jative has haunted the decks of her ship, waiting for the moment she too can go to her final and deserved rest.
The Admiral paused in brief silence for a private prayer for a fellow Fleet Admiral, and above all else, for a beloved sister.
Activate tractor fields around Jacors and execute flight path.
On board the Jacors, the golden luminescent form of Jative, seated on her command pedestal dressed in a flowing luminescent gown, not the uniform she had finally been able to shed, smiled. She knew now was the time for her well-deserved sleep. Slowly, her golden body dissolved into the vacuum of the dead ship, leaving it forever.